Hey sis, are black women in a narcissistic entanglement with black men? In my last essay, yes, he's a narc and here's why. And if you are catching this on Substack, it will be linked directly in the written essay. If you are on YouTube, I will link this in the description box. I shared my belief that women, specifically black women, who date, entertain, or seek romantic connections with black men, for her, there's a very high chance that she'll stumble across a narcissistic man within the community while she's dating if she's not careful. More likely than not, this could be her experience, as what black women are subjected to is something I call collective narcissism. My reasons for this belief? Other than my own past experiences of dating black men, marrying and divorcing one who is a covert and malignant narcissist, and observing the BLK Manosphere and their narratives about black women over the years, outside of all this, it's the current and historic relationship dynamic between black men and women, driven by black men that many black women comply with, that has led me to hold this belief. Anyone who observes the energy between black men and women closely will soon see the link between narcissistic traits and the expectations, in quotation marks, placed on black women by black men throughout the black diaspora, which is the dynamic between us I'm referring to. I call this a collective narcissism experience for black women. In other words, it's the hold black men try to have over black women's minds, how black women see themselves, black women's roles in relationships, specifically with black men. Lastly, control over how black women's standards should be and what she should accept while dating them, meaning black men. This is where collective narcissism breeds in the community. I'm not convinced that enough black women see it, or we see it, then we decide to unsee it. What's amazing is they, meaning black men, won't dare give these messages of manipulation or bring their collective narcissism to other groups of non-black women. There are many reasons why. I do have a theory, but that's for a separate essay. Instead, they use non-black women in a certain role as part of collective narcissism against black women. Black women are triangulated by black men with other non-black women. This is something that research shows narcissists actually do, which is to triangulate people, or more commonly known as triangulating their supply. As per the case with the beautiful Ramika Meeks, who lost her life recently to a black man's narcissistic behaviour of triangulation with another black woman rather than a non-black woman, because Ramika was no longer interested in him. Collective narcissism and black women's experiences. So with the birth of the internet, black women have been able to collect, see and view the evidence within the BLK Manosphere and black men as a collective that points to narcissistic traits. If you're a woman around my age, born in the early 80s, or maybe even earlier, if you're very honest with yourself, you will have noticed that due to social media and the internet, how far black men have gone to bully black women into submission, in quotation marks that they like to say, and or degrading them so that they, meaning black men, feel like the leader, again in quotation marks, something they love to say. It's hard to unsee what I've seen and probably what you've seen, which is key. And this is key because younger black women need to see it too, and older black women don't need to entertain it anymore. We need to decolonize our minds of black men's collective narcissism, which is on the rise, especially as more black men are now turning to right-wing ideology to justify their desire to oppress women via white men's narratives about control and politics. Am I saying that other races of men or ethnicities of men can't be narcissistic? Absolutely not. Other men outside the community can and are narcissistic as individuals. But do they, as a group of men, treat their women with narcissistic manipulation that we see in the black community and that will be demonstrated throughout this essay? No, is the answer you're probably going to come to. Do they oppress their women? Yes, of course they do. But that's not the focus here. It's narcissistic behaviour towards black women, form of unique oppression against black women we face as a focus. It should be clear to any reader or listener, I'm not saying that other men are not narcissistic, but what I am saying is that black women in any part of the diaspora, from our shared experiences and from what research, data and evidence shows us about narcissism as black women, sadly, collective narcissism is something unique to a black woman's experience via the treatment and expectations from black men within the BLK Manosphere and their followers. There's a culture ingrained, and we could say that is upheld by the BLK Manosphere, that seeps into the mindsets of black men outside of this space. This is geared towards black women that is unique to us as a group of women. We have a culture or dynamic, as I called it earlier on, between us that could be argued as one that is an emotionally abusive dynamic, fueled by male narcissism and a sense of entitlement to women and manipulation. Of course, individually, we can find men in the community who are not narcissistic or do not have narcissistic traits, but as a collective, it could be easily argued there are more who are than who are not. There are too many black men who hold collective narcissistic traits, behaviour or ideology to argue that it's not all black men, in quotation marks. If it's not all black men, then for generations, black women would not have been experiencing the same treatment. It's a cancer that has embedded itself in black male culture. Not only that, we also have way too high of a femicide rate, the highest of women of all races, which I covered in one of my previous essays, a quick global look at black femicide. If you're catching this on YouTube, I will make sure that video is linked in the description, or it may pop up somewhere in the corner where I'm speaking now. If you are on Substack, then that will be directly linked in this essay. I wrote this in preparation for October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month to argue that, it's a majority of them, which means it's most of them. Black women's compliance and refusal to see an issue with their behaviour so they can still be picked by these men helps to keep this cycle going. So where can black women see collective narcissism? In the community or in black men? When someone says they're a narcissist, no matter who they're talking about, it should be remembered that there are different types of narcissists, which I have covered in a previous essay. However, usually when we think of a narcissist, we think of the loud, swaggering type who takes up space in every room. In other words, the grandiose narcissist. Sometimes they call it the overt narcissist. According to psychologists and their mental health diagnosis document that they use, called the DSM-5, which is free for the public and for everyone to read. If you are catching this on Substack, there will be a link directly to this in the written essay. If you are on YouTube, I will make sure it's in the description box for you. This public-facing style of narcissism is what they deem as the classic type among all the subcategories, as they are easy to spot and they are marked by overt confidence, entitlement, and a hunger for admiration. So let's pause here and look at this clinical definition of what narcissism is. Overt or open confidence, entitlement, and a hunger for admiration. Does this not sound like black men's collective behaviour in the manosphere and their followers to you? When they tell us things like, you should date the light bill guy. So that is Tyler Perry's influential but dusty advice for black women. Your degree means nothing if you ain't got a man or if you're not married, which was Kevin Samuels and et al.'s dusty viewpoint on women. No one desires black women. The dusty black manosphere's narrative about black women. You need to submit, in quotation marks, to me and let me lead you or be the head of the family, again in quotation marks, all while I have nothing to offer you, but I also want a 50-50 relationship. Again, this is the dusty black manosphere and their viewpoint on how relationships should actually work. Or what about when they tell you things like, what do you bring to the table? Which was Kevin Samuels' dusty logic about a woman's role towards men. And then finally, we have things like, you should be ride or die for me, which is a historical black power message from black men to black women. Does this not sound like a group of men who are very confident in their desirability, even if they can only afford to pay the light bill. They feel entitled to you and that you should lower your expectations in a partner, even if they have nothing to offer. The educated woman, the financially stable woman paying her own bills, the woman who has no problem with her looks and sees herself as desirable already, the woman who has a standard that won't be lowered for a man who is not worth lowering it for, and the woman they really hate, the woman who does not see them, meaning black men, as any kind of prize or any man, because she knows and she sees herself as the prize and she can easily articulate why she feels this way. Does this not sound like a group of men asking, seeking, and looking for what you can offer him or bring to his table? In other words, his supply, just like what narcissists actually seek, supply from other people. Does this not sound like a group of men who seek your admiration via the submission and godlike status that they want when they, as an individual man, may not have done anything to deserve this? Can we confidently say the Black Manosphere and their male followers are narcissists? According to the DSM-5 document again, Narcissistic Personality Disorder is defined by meeting the diagnostic criteria. The individual or individuals in this case must show 5 or more of the following traits. Number 1, a grandiose sense of self-importance. Number 2, preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Number 3, a belief that they are special and unique. Number 4, requirement for excessive admiration. Number 5, a sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favourable treatment. Number 6, interpersonally exploitative behaviour, taking advantage of others to achieve their own needs. Number 7, a lack of empathy, unwilling to recognise or identify with the feelings and needs of others. Number 8, envy of others or belief that others are envious of them. And finally, number 9, arrogant, haughty behaviours or attitudes. If you're catching this on Substack, you can clearly see that I have highlighted 7 of these behaviours that the Black Manosphere actually do show and have demonstrated in the 6 messages that they give black women that I referred to earlier on. Yes, these men have a grandiose sense of self-importance and a need for admiration via the need for black women to be ride or die for them or sacrifice themselves in some way. Yes, these men are preoccupied with a fantasy of their unlimited power and brilliance they have over black women by asking us things like, what do you bring to the table? Yes, these men believe that they are special with a sense of entitlement to us, even if they can't afford anything or can only offer to pay a light bill, for example. Yes, they have an exploitative personality by expecting black women to lower their standards, to meet men where they are at, to allow men access to them as women. For example, men who can only pay the light bill or are lacking in some other way, we should accept them just as they are, just because they're black and male. And therefore, in their point of view, or in their viewpoint, according to what Tyler Perry has been trying to make them believe, that just because they are black and male, therefore they are our only or best option. What is the point of these public service announcements for black women? I've asked myself many times why men of all races do what they do to women, but specifically I have pondered the behaviours and attitudes of black men towards black women. Logically, it could be concluded that it's to keep black women in her place. This would mean her place in society and her place compared to where black men are at in society. In other words, it's all about control. Control. Think about this. What is the whole objective and point of a narcissist or narcissistic behaviour? It is control. The DSM-5 document used to diagnose all mental health or personality disorders that links to narcissism shows elements of control showing up in admiration, entitlement, manipulation, and exploitation. No matter who the victim of the narcissist is, their behaviour is designed for power play and control over the subject, the victim. In this context, we have black men and women, and then if we consider why they may want this control, we can see that it's due to their, meaning black men's, lack of overall control, just like a typical narcissist when they lose control. So how, I hear you say? Their lack of control in society as a whole. No matter how much black power you embrace, no matter how many protests you do on behalf of black men rather than yourself, sis, since the dawn of the civil rights movement across the diaspora, not just in the USA, can you personally answer this question? As a collective of men, not individually, has the status, power, or place in society's hierarchy changed for black men? No, is the answer you'll probably arrive at. How about this then? Has it changed for you and other black women? Yes, is most likely what you said. How it has changed for black women as a collective, I have written about many times and presented data to support this idea of change. This change would be and has been in our income, definitely in our educational levels, in home ownership, in business ownership, and general social mobility upwards shown for us as a group of women. This is my point about where control comes in for black men and why they want to use it. Nothing has changed for them significantly as a collective in these areas. There's no real data or research to support that idea, and I've tried to find it. I could verify that there's been a change for them also, so that we can say, okay, there has been a change significant for black people, not just women. Not because of racism, totally, because we face racism also, as well as sexism. It's because they don't want to change, and because many black women make it easy for them not to bother to change with how we coddle them. That's what we need to remember. They would rather, as a collective, that we, women, lower ourselves and remain accessible via this collective narcissism towards black women so that we don't elevate. But what we will do is carry the community as we have historically done. Now, this might shock you. One study by the Brookings Institute, in their article called The Inheritance of Poverty, It's All About the Men, was published in 2018, shows that black women are likely to be rooted to poverty, to use their words in quotations, and inherit this, to use their words and quotations again, because of black men's status in society. However, individually, when she, meaning a black woman, is either single or she's not single, but she's not romantically involved with them, she's not in poverty. That is a hard pill to swallow for them and us as black women. Personally, in my experience, this is true. I did inherit poverty being married to my first ex-husband, who I earned more than and who I had more assets than, which is why now I would never date a man who has less than me or ever in my life again do a 50-50 relationship. I'm just not doing it. As soon as I left over 10 years ago, I was out of poverty. Even with a small child at the time, I was not in the same level of poverty I was in with him. If women elevate or continue to elevate, as the data has shown, where does this leave men? In reality, I hate to say it, undesirable in terms of what they bring to the table. If we want to use their wording, that's where they'll be left, eventually undesirable, unless we do as they want via this collective narcissism and lower our standards as they advocate for us to do, because they are aware that women are not going to want sons or dependents as partners, or men that are not intellectually, financially, emotionally, spiritually, or even life direction wise compatible with. As a final note for black women, if we are the only group of women who have managed to pass our own men when it comes to education, income, home ownership, etc., exactly how much control do the men have over us? None. That's their fear. That's where the BLK Manosphere's collective narcissism and narcissistic traits breed. It's from this standpoint of a loss of control. So are black women in a narcissistic entanglement with black men? Going back to my opening title, if we as black women consider the demands expectations, and most importantly, the narrative that men in the community, whether they are a celebrity or the average Joe, put out for black women's attention, and then think about how this behaviour and the objective of the behaviour to keep black women below them or in a certain position, then yes, we can see the correlation and link with what black women experience from the BLK Manosphere and classic narcissistic personality disorder as defined by the DSM-5 or even traits of it. While I'm not clinically trained to certify this, I am logical. I can make 2 plus 2 equal 4, and I'm able to see a pattern, which by now, if you're a woman of a certain age, I hope you can or have seen yourself. If you're a younger black woman, I hope you're waking up to see this pattern. As many black women around the diaspora need to let go of our historical need that I would argue has been placed on us to protect men, overlook their mistreatment, or ignore what can be seen. This is a classic trauma response an abuse victim would have. I had it with my first husband. So as a collective of women, I can see how we may have this towards the collective narcissism we experience from a certain group of men to keep control of us. This response of protection and ignoring certain things like the femicide rate, like the collective narcissism, for example, could this support the idea that we are in an emotionally abusive entanglement with a group of men who display narcissism? You think about it. You tell me. Think about this also. Don't unsee what can be seen already, especially if you are a black woman who has decided, you've made the crazy decision that you only want to date this group of men. You will need your wits about you while doing so, as the collective narcissism can turn into individual or even personal narcissism towards you, like it happened to me, if you allow a man with a certain mindset into your life. In my next essays, I will discuss the different types of narcissists with clear examples for as many black women to see and understand where and how she might find these kind of men, drawing from the men in the media we all know. First up is the grandiose narcissistic type, featuring God, in quotation marks, himself, none other than Kanye West. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for staying with me if you made it this far. If you are on YouTube and you enjoy this kind of content, drop me a comment, let me know your thoughts. Why not consider subscribing? I'd love to see you back here again. If you are on Substack, then thank you so much for being here. I will catch you in the next one. Much love, the Black Woman Essayist.